Hi, everybody. Today we're going to talk about synthesis. And the reason why we're talking about it now is because it's a tool that you're going to use from here on out during the research process to help you talk about your source material within any writing assignment you have. We have some discussions coming up where you're going to be reading through your resources and using note taking techniques to take notes. And throughout that process, hopefully, you'll be jotting down your own ideas and thoughts as you do that note taking. So let's go ahead and get started talking about it. First of all, you should have by now watched this video, What is Synthesis? It's only 3 minutes long. And if you haven't watched it yet, then pause me right now and go back and watch it because you're going to want to have kind of that background information. A lot of what we do over the next few weeks is going to be kind of based on the principles talked about in this quick video. So, let me get my bobblehead in a good place. I'm not usually I like to make this full screen, but I have a dual screen system right now. So if I do that, then my PowerPoint's going to jump onto the next page. So I'm just going to leave it in this mode as I talk through. I just have a few slides to go through, and then I have some other web pages I want to look at. So first of all, synthesis can be defined as the combination of ideas to form a theory or system. So that's kind of a scientific definition. I got this from dictionary.com. And, I just Googled it because we Google everything now, right? And so I want to kind of further define that as what it means in the research process. So I just wrote something down right here. In a research essay, it means coming up with a list of main points. And for every main point, including summaries, quotes, and paraphrases from multiple sources, that's at least two, to support your main point. So right now, what you're going to be doing, you just did your annotated bibliography and you've got all these sources. 5 of them are kind of in this little circle. And so what you're going to be doing is now that you've read all these sources, you're going to kind of be interacting with them, writing down things like what do these sources say, which you can draw directly from your summaries, and then also start thinking about, well, this is what this source says, this is what I think about that. And synthesis is kind of, this is what source A says, and this is how source B agrees or disagrees, and kind of mixing those together to talk about your own points. So remember that when you're doing your research essay, you're adding to an already ongoing conversation about the topic that you've chosen. So think about yourself in your essay as being the main speaker. You've already kind of started putting your ideas together. You have your research question, which we did a few weeks ago, and then that kind of morphed into a thesis statement, which states your argument. And now you want to start thinking about, now that you've done your annotated bibliography, you want to start thinking about, okay, what are the main points that I want to cover? So while you're going through your sources, you're kind of like writing down what main points you're going to be outlining in your paper. And then you're also going to start thinking about how you're going to use multiple sources to support your main points. Every once in a while, I think every semester, I get at least one paper where the student basically takes their annotated bibliography and writes their paper based on source. So they add transitions, they add their own ideas, but their entire paper is source based. So this source says this, and this is what I think. And this source says that, and this is what I think. And that's not what you should be doing in your research. You should be saying, this is my point, and this is what my sources say about my point, and this is what I have to say. So you're using multiple sources to support your own main point. And one way to look at that is by using what Excelsior College's online writing lab refers to as the meal plan. So I'm going to make this a little small right now, and I'm going to show you this page. You'll see this graphic throughout the class, it's embedded, because we're allowed to do that. See, they have embed right there. I get to take the code and just go nuts. But what they mean by M is the main idea. So your first sentence in a paragraph should present the main idea of what that paragraph is going to be about. And of course, you're doing that in your own words. And this paragraph's main idea should connect to the thesis statement of your paper. So it's kind of an elaboration on a portion of your thesis statement. Now, the E talks about the evidence that you're going to use, and that's where you're synthesizing multiple sources to kind of prove that main idea. So that's what you mean, what we mean by evidence. You can summarize, you can paraphrase, and you can quote from your sources. And then the A is now that you've presented your own evidence, you've given the main idea, now you're going to comment and give your own analysis of why this information that you just quoted, summarized, paraphrased, is important to your argument, okay? And then the last sentence is kind of like the wrap up of the paragraph and then kind of leading into the next point. So that's what the meal plan is. I will refer to this throughout the semester, so be ready. But this is kind of like an overview of that process. Okay, now you can see the title of this week's lesson is Mining Your Sources and Note Taking. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to, first of all, be reading The Curious Researchers, chapter 3. And Bruce Ballinger in this chapter talks about a concept that he's coined writing in the middle. And basically what that means is you're not ready to draft your research paper in the traditional sense, but here you're kind of talking to your sources. You're reading what your sources have to say, and then you're putting in an I say. And this is all done in your notes, but what you'll see is that you're actually kind of writing portions of your paper as you go through your source material. And so Bruce Ballinger says, I now believe that writing takes place in the middle of the research process, which is where we are right now, the note-taking stage. And it may be as important, if not more important, than the writing that takes place at the end, composing the draft. Writing in the middle helps you take possession of your sources and establish your presence in the draft. It sharpens your thinking about your topic, and it is the best cure for unintentional plagiarism, which is another topic we'll be covering very soon. Okay, so when we look at Bruce's chapter 3, and I actually pulled it up right here. Remember in this, let's see, I kind of moved ahead of you. I think when you go into Revel, this is what you're looking at, and it kind of gives you all the different dates and assignments, which will constantly vary. But if you go in this corner over here, you go to the table of contents, it'll take you right to the third week, chapter 3. And so you can, this is that whole portion of writing in the middle. He's got some information about plagiarism, and then he also talks about the note taker's triad, which is quotation, paraphrase, and summary, which I'm about to talk about. And then he's got a whole section on note-taking methods, which we'll cover quickly after that. So let's take a quick look back. Okay, so when you paraphrase material, what you're doing is you're reading a quote or a portion of the text. And instead of doing a direct quote or summarizing it, like say you have 2 sentences and you're like, these are the 2 sentences. Like there's a lot of good information here, but I don't want to quote this directly. Well, maybe you want to restate what that author has to say in your own words. And that's really what paraphrasing is. It's restating a passage in your own words, but the passage that you're restating, what you write is as long as the passage you're restating. So you're changing words around. You might change the way the sentence is structured. You might use different adjectives and verbs and nouns. So it's your words, but it's still your author's ideas. And so you also want to make sure that you cite that source. It just doesn't have to be in quotes because you're not directly copying what the source had. Summary we've been doing, right? Your annotated bibliography. You had summaries up to here. And that's, again, a brief statement of main points of the source. So when you're looking at a source and you just want to kind of summarize what their main points are, that's what you're doing, you're summarizing. Or if you have a really long passage or like you have an interview that you've done with somebody, and like I've had students just put their interview transcripts right there into the paper, and it's like no. Why not? Because that's kind of boring for the reader. They don't want to read the interview. They want to know what parts of the interview are important. And so it's your job as the writer to read through all that information and summarize it for the reader, and then talk about how that information is important to your own discussion. And then, of course, when you do a quote, you're quoting the author's exact words. You're putting it in quote marks, and you need to make it make sense in the context of what you're writing. So sometimes people have to change things within the quote. And if you do that, you'll put brackets around what you've changed. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit later in the semester. But for right now, you just want to know that you have three things that you'll be doing with your source material. You'll either be paraphrasing it, you'll be summarizing it, or you'll be quoting the author's exact words. Okay, so note-taking techniques. This comes, some of the techniques that we're looking at on the discussion boards include Ballinger's idea of the double entry journal. I'm doing a research log, narrative note-taking, and then I think those all come in one discussion. And then there's another discussion where you take three more sources, and it's called the power of three. And you take a source that really fascinates you, and you kind of answer some questions and summarize it and talk about what is fascinating. You might take a source that intimidates you. Maybe there's a really long study that you have that you're like, I don't know what to do with this. And by the way, if you have a really long study, read the introduction, read the abstract, and then kind of jump towards the end and look at the conclusions and the results. And then see what in the middle of that study you need to look at a little more deeply. Just a little tip. And then think of if there are any sources that are going to lead you, like they have some good ideas, but you want to get more in depth. And so you might look at a source's bibliography or references page, and find additional source material about something based on that. All right, and so my last slide is, it's a research matrix, and I copied and pasted this out of Word. I just made it. I'm gonna put the Word document up on the other screen because it didn't turn out on PowerPoint very good. So this is what the research matrix looks like. And I'm supplying it to you in a Word document. So you can do whatever you want with this. This is not something that I'm asking you to turn in. This is not something that you are required to complete, but this is a really great way for you to organize your source ideas. And what I mean is, say you have 7 sources right now. You should have 10 sources in your paper, and I put 7 here. I don't know, maybe I was too ambitious. Maybe I should change this and make this 5 sources and then do another page with sources 6 through 10. Maybe that's what I should do. Regardless, you're going to put the author's information in each of these squares, and then you're going to write your main ideas that you want to cover in your paper here. And then as you go through your sources, you can kind of check, as you're reading through these sources, which of these sources talks about the main ideas that you're discussing. And it'll just be a reference page for you to go back to and kind of help you organize your research paper when it's time to do that. So that's really all I wanted to say about note taking. I hope this was helpful. Of course, I'm always available online if you have questions. And that's it. Have a great day, and I will see you online.